What's up, everybody? Welcome to the AllSooners Podcast. We're back in the midweek groove. It's Wednesday. It's September 20th. It's episode 207, and it is Cincinnati week. Ryan Chapman is in Moore. I'm in John Hoover. I'm in Tulsa. And we are closer and closer. I'm getting nervous, Ryan, about our first airplane flight since last year's bowl game, which was an abject disaster. I'm getting a little nervous that I'm going to forget something, or I'm going to not check in, we leave at like 5:30 in the morning, so that means an early check-in on Thursday, which is tomorrow, which is it's like 12 hours from now. It's like 16 hours from now. I don't know why, Ryan. I'm an old guy. I've done this a lot, but I'm nervous about traveling. I can't put my finger on it.
Our last trip went, I'm not going to say the phrase as poorly as possible because I do not want to open the door for Trip from Hell Part 2. But If you don't remember, it was in the middle of the Southwest meltdown at Christmas. When Josh and I arrived, our room was dirty, so we had to we were not sleeping in this room. So we got optioned into the only other room, which was a king-size single that Josh and I had to split the bed. And then after the game, your car died in the parking lot, which meant we didn't get to go back and actually sleep at all. And I finished my final story at 5 a.m. in the Orlando airport running on fumes. And Josh, you've got to read this because I'm not sure I spoke the English in this story. The last trip travel-wise was terrible. So I'm hoping that maybe this is a bounce back, a get-right spot.
It was not the best. So maybe that's why I'm a little so nervous, because my flight got canceled and I had to drive the whole thing. Hey, 12 hours to Cincinnati would be a heck of a lot better than 17 hours to Orlando. So I got that going for me, which is nice. Don't expect any cancellations.
And we know the car battery is good because you've had to have that checked up on recently.
Yeah, if I would quit leaving the dome light on, maybe it would stop draining. Simple fix, simple solution for Hoover to not have a broken car. Man, yeah, Orlando seems a million years away. Let's push that to the side. Let's push it far back in the deep, dark recesses of our subconscious and never talk of it again. Cincinnati this week. Interesting. That's a Big 12 conference game. Ryan, did you know Cincinnati was in the Big 12? What? This just feels weird to me. I mean, I've been to Cincinnati for a football game back in 2010. And I've been on every one of those since 2004, every one of those Joe Castiglione non-conference premier specials. I've been to every one of those, Tennessee, Ohio State, you name it. That's what this kind of feels like to me, is that one game a year where you go on the road to someplace new. No, bro, this is a conference game. How cool is that?
Yeah, I was talking this morning with Eddie and Dylan over on the franchise about how, for Oklahoma State, these game weeks for the newbies is going to feel a lot different than for Oklahoma. For Oklahoma State, it's the first game of what will become a not yearly guaranteed, but a very, very regular conference matchup. Whereas for Oklahoma, this is like you had that substitute teacher come in and all they're doing is assigning you a worksheet. And so it's like, if the sub is cool, then you're like, that was great, and we're going to really enjoy this day because I'm probably never going to see this person again. And if the sub ends up being awful, you're just like, you just got to get through the next 40 minutes till that bell rings because it's a sub and I'm never going to see them again. That's what this is like. This is not a Big 12 game. It's a Big 12 game in name only. The new Big 12 is not the Big 12. It's some new thing. I imagine it'll get rebranded. And Oklahoma's headed to the SEC, which feels equally odd at times. But Oklahoma and Cincinnati in a conference game, it's a one-off. And I'll say the same thing about UCF and the same thing about BYU. These are not conference games other than when you tally it in the standings.
Feels like a placeholder, doesn't it?
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah, like a temporary fix. Yeah. And that's too bad because I'd like to make a regular thing out of going to Cincinnati. I've been to Cincinnati a lot. Really enjoy the food, really enjoy the people there. Have never been to Provo, Utah. I've been to the airport a couple of times in Salt Lake, but never, out and around the town. So that's going to be fun when we get there in November. But first things first, let's wrap up the Tulsa game. Oklahoma jumps out on Tulsa 28-0. It was not a game, which surprised me. I thought Kevin Wilson, I thought a rebuilding TU, new culture. I thought this was going to be something that a little bit of early staying power. They were in over their heads. They played the wrong quarterback. I saw what Kevin Wilson said about why, he plays Roman Fuller over Cardell Williams. Probably wishes he'd gone the other direction right now. I don't know. But, some early interceptions, some early takeaways by the Oklahoma defense, some early long passes by the Oklahoma offense. And next thing you know, that thing's 66-17, and they're not even – it was easier than it looked, Ryan.
Yeah, I think my biggest surprise was not that it was lopsided or anything, because Montgomery didn't leave that Tulsa program in a great spot for Kevin Wilson. Don't need to beat a dead horse, but turn your back on the talent in Tulsa is an egregious thing to do for any head coach at Tulsa, and Kevin Wilson's not going to do that. But I think the most surprising thing, and it's something that Brent Venables was asked about on Tuesday, because we'll preview this, talking about the defensive line for Cincinnati, but it was do you want to be a team that takes what the other team gives you, or that asserts your will? And yeah. Brent said, you're never going to turn a blind eye to what the matchups are, but the best teams can come in and say, this is what we do. And I thought that Oklahoma was going to come in to that Tulsa game and say, we want to run the ball. And as a result, I thought it was going to shorten the game a little bit. That's not what Oklahoma did. Oklahoma said, we've got Dylan Gabriel, who's one of the most efficient passers in the country through 3 games, and Tulsa's pass defense is not good. We want to shred through the air, and that's what Oklahoma did. The pass protection was great outside of a play. Ended up in an interception, and Dylan Gabriel had all the time to be that efficient guy. You saw a bunch of breakout games for wide receivers, all of that. And so Oklahoma did what it was supposed to do in the non-conference. It made 2 way inferior opponents look hapless. That's what good teams do. And we'll find out a lot more about SMU this weekend. They take on TCU at 11. If SMU can give them a game, then you feel a little bit better about conservative game plan plus a good SMU team. That's why you still won by 17, but it was 14-11 in the fourth quarter. I think that one's a game that we're going to have some hindsight to kind of know what that situation was to put a bow on OU's non-conference.
Yeah, when Brent said that about you like to assert yourself in terms of taking what you want, going in with a game plan and asserting what you want to do, the first thing I thought of was Alabama and all those big running backs they have and all those, Heisman contender quarterbacks they had. And I'm thinking offensively, of course, but defensively, Alabama just for a decade and a half did whatever it wanted. But offensively, they evolved and they changed and they tempoed and they did this and they did that. But it was always pretty much the same thing. Can you imagine if someone would have asked Nick Saban at some point, hey, coach, did you think about taking what the defense gave you there? That's not how Nick Saban operates. When Brent was at Clemson with Deshaun and Trevor Lawrence, they didn't walk around asking what the defense wanted them to do. They took what was there, and they, of course, the easy stuff, but they had a game plan, and they had, first-round draft picks, and they had guys who were better than the guys across from them, and that's where Brent's trying to get to. He's trying to get to that, having 5 receivers on the team who could go for 100 yards at any minute. And we saw that last week. We had 3 guys over 100 yards. I've been covering OU a long time. Guess what? Haven't seen that since 2012. You got a guy with the 100-yard kick return, the 100-yard receiving. That's never happened in OU history. All of a sudden you're starting to see, I know it's Tulsa, don't get too excited, but you're starting to see a little bit of that kind of puffy chest, doubled fist, square jaw. We do what we want. We're Oklahoma. We'll see if that translates into conference play, especially going on the road, starting this week. We'll see how good, how Cincinnati, coming off a very disappointing loss. They're 2-1 on the season, but we'll see how they can hang with that kind of mentality from Oklahoma.
And it'll be really interesting, too, because what is the one thing that Brent Venables led Big 12 Media Day with at the podium and then in the breakout? Defensively, need to cut that yards per carry in half, right? Oklahoma was at 4+ last year, need to be closer to 2. That's championship level. Did that through the non-conference. Cincinnati, a top 10 rushing team coming in. So got a top running back plus Emory Jones who can hurt you on the ground. If Oklahoma wants to assert themselves, they'll bottle up Cincinnati's run game. You flip that over through 3 weeks. What has Oklahoma done? They've aired it out, attacked deep, score from far, the Jeff Lebby thing. That's what they've wanted to do. Great defensive line, tied for 16th in the country in sacks with 10 sacks coming in. Is Oklahoma going to be able to protect Dillon Gabriel and give him all the time to score from far and all that stuff? Because the running game's still a work in progress. So I think it's a really interesting test. Overall, if Oklahoma has taken the step forward that Oklahoma wants to have taken, they should be able to mix it up and win some battles, lose some battles up front with the Cincy defensive line and still be okay to win this game. But I'm really interested to see. It should be a good progress tracker for a lot of those things when you talk about asserting yourself, what Oklahoma wants to do versus what Cincinnati's strengths are.
Yeah, I agree. Oklahoma's going to go into that game. They're going to say, we want to establish the run. We want to quiet the crowd. We want 10 play drives and things like that. It's not going to be that easy against that Cincinnati front. Cincinnati's going to get some 3 and outs. They're going to get some. They're going to create some havoc up front. They're going to bust. They're going to cause some busts on the blocking scheme. We've seen some busts on the blocking schemes against Tulsa and against Arkansas State. So Cincinnati's going to be eager to get in there and see what they can do. Let's talk about Dillon Gabriel real quick. Talked to him on Monday. He was 0-2 in his career against Tulsa. He is 0-2 in his career against Cincinnati. Took it out on Tulsa, of course. He's got better players now than he did when he was at UCF. He's got better players now going to Cincinnati with Oklahoma on the side of their side of their helmet than he did when he was with UCF. So he's got a good chance to break that streak for sure. But dude is, I think, leading the nation in completion percentage right now. Is he number 1 or number 2 at 82.5%? His QBR is like 98. Like 100 is perfect, and nobody comes close to 100. He's at 98 through 3 games. He's playing at an entirely new level right now. Ryan, can he keep that up at Cincinnati?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. He's 0-2 against Cincinnati. He's 0-1 against former Louisville defensive coordinator Brian Brown, who made the trek over with Satterfield to Cincy. So it's a weird thing of you got the history against Cincinnati, and you also have a game against the tent poles of this Cincinnati coaching staff that obviously came over from Louisville. My question for Dillon Gabriel is going to be this. You might have a true freshman starting at left guard. Caden Green made that move over against Tulsa. Yeah. Savion Byrd, Brent Venables said hopeful. Sounds like a head injury situation, so that's not in anyone's hands other than if that's the case, you test out of protocol, stuff like that. You bet that Cincinnati's going to say, let's test that left guard. So one thing we haven't seen Gabriel have to do, which is not a knock on Gabriel, is his pocket's been clean most of the year, and so he's been able to be very fast through his progressions, efficient, all that. Will Oklahoma be able to keep that up? Will they continue to be great in pass protection? Cincinnati's going to have some success. That's what I'm looking forward to most, to see if Gabriel, on those plays where things break down, is that where he can still excel? We didn't see that from him last year, and we haven't really had a chance to see it this year because Oklahoma's been so clean for the most part in the pass protection game. So I think he should be able to continue that. He looks like a different guy. But I think much like we talk about the team as a whole, that until they go out there and win a couple of Big 12 games to start the year, it would kind of be almost foolish based off what happened last year to just sprint out and be like, this team is totally different. We know that. Don't think we know that. I also don't think we know that Gabriel's going to be totally different in those big high leverage situations, whether it be Dante Corleone chased him down or like a 3rd and long against a living, breathing actual defense, which Oklahoma hasn't played yet.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. The I guess lack of running game for the Oklahoma offense. How concerning is that? Especially what we just talked about: Dante Corleone, Jawan Briggs, guys that are proven run stoppers, guys that are shop wreckers. They're probably at some point looking at a freshman on the offensive line, or looking at instability at left guard, or looking at a little inexperience here and there, and they're probably saying, this is going to be awesome. This is our big chance. This is our chance to break out. We got Brett Yormark in town. We got the Big 12 homecoming celebration, 11 a.m. coming off a big noon kickoff. First ever Big 12 conference game. On and on and on. these guys kind of control. They're like the maybe the blackjack dealers. They kind of control the cards right now, don't they?
Yeah, and the interesting thing too is, okay, if you talk about uncertainty on the offensive line, there's also zero running backs that are in rhythm right now to help
Yeah.
turn that tide in the first quarter while a Green or a Troy Everett gets adjusted. Tawi Walker felt like the only guy that found any rhythm against SMU, and he was basically iced against Tulsa, just not used at all. Javante Barnes, I thought he was fine. I'm just curious to see, okay, I have no faith that right now, the way the rotation's gone, that Javante Barnes is going to get the chance to build off of his a little bit of success against Tulsa. He just wasn't really used at all against SMU. And so I am a bit concerned with that, just because Oklahoma has not gotten themselves into a real rhythm outside of the second half with Tawi Walker against SMU. And this is not the defensive line to go up against if you don't have a running game that's in rhythm and you're trying to figure things out.
Yeah, Ryan, Cincinnati's a team, too, don't forget, that recently produced a couple of NFL draft picks at the cornerback position. So while those guys are not there, that talent, those two dudes are in the NFL now. That imprint, that DNA, as OU likes to say, is kind of set for here's how Cincinnati cornerbacks play college football. Here's the level at which you're expected to be, right? So I don't know. You're going to have to me, you're going to have to get a really hyper-focused effort out of somebody with experience like a Drake Stoops or a Jalil Farouk. We had a good story this afternoon on Jalil Farouk and his ability to break down defenses, see the defenses unfold like a running back and make cuts and make really mature moves, really mature decisions with the football in his hand, even though he fumbled that kickoff at the Tulsa game. I think this is going to be a game where your more experienced players on the perimeter, especially your more experienced players, are the guys you're going to have to rely on.
Yeah, and that's another situation, Hoove, where even if you're not talking about the experienced guys on the perimeter, you thought that there was some depth to help those guys along against Arkansas State, and then we really only saw Farouk, Stoops, Freeman. Like, we only saw the experienced guys against SMU.
Yeah.
Bunch of breakout performances, you think, with Andrel Anthony and Nick Anderson alongside Farouk against Tulsa. Let's see, is Andrel Anthony going to be able to be a factor to help stretch the field, to help Farouk and Stoops work underneath? Or is it going to go back to kind of that shortened rotation, a more conservative gameplay? I think there's a lot of unknowns head into this game, which is why the message around Drake Stoops and those guys is they had meetings telling everyone we haven't proved anything yet. Remember, you were 3-0 through the non-conference last year, how it turned out. And then flipping over, Danny Stutzman's done the same thing with the defense. He was like, guys, great. You want a cookie? We went 3-0 in the non-conference. A lot of improvement to be made. You're going to play actual teams. No disrespect to everybody else, all that stuff. And that was kind of the message on Sunday and Monday as they're trying to put the Tulsa game to bed and turn the page to Cincinnati.
Yeah, I want to break down the defense in the next segment, and we'll get to that because I saw something on my Sunday film review that I want to ask you about that Brent Venables talked about Saturday, and I think he might have talked about it again on Tuesday. But here I am saying it's going to be a game where the experienced receivers have to step up and make mature plays. I mean, that sounds like a sound thing to say going into your first true road game, your first conference game, and all that, right? You're stepping up in competition. But then you got a guy like Nick Anderson who just has gifts from Mount Olympus. And holy cats, 3 catches, 3 touchdowns. He still hasn't been tackled, Ryan. Still hasn't been tackled.
Get that man in the open field. Get him the football. And now suddenly it's a group that coming into the year was the question mark. Okay, we've seen in back-to-back games, get the ball to Jalil Farouk in the open field, running through arm tackles. Yeah. Nick Anderson getting behind defenses, running through arm tackles. Jaden Gibson had a really nice contested catch, a guy that the 2 times we had seen him, last year against TCU a drop, the spring game 2-1 conversion a drop. Now he's making a contested catch there. It'll be really interesting. But, yeah, Anderson clearly is a guy that he needs to be on the field. He needs to be in that rotation. The tight ends have not been a real factor. So unless they're in there to block and help out, right now, I'd rather see Nick Anderson be a 4th pass catcher out there than either Austin Stogner or Blake Smith. Again, if they're not being used to either disguise things or block, which both of those guys I thought Stogner and Blake Smith have been pretty good blocking wise.
Stogner is a pretty solid tight end. Gavin Freeman is a really good. Everybody loves both those guys. Really good gadget play, surprise, catch you off guard kind of guy. Neither one of those guys was born on Mount Olympus. Neither one of those guys has been endowed with superpowers like Nick Anderson and Jaden Gibson have. And a quick thought on Jaden Gibson. He's might be, I'm not for sure about this, but just some early returns in his career when you're talking about the spring game and you're talking about this season. He might be one of those receivers that when you throw it up to them and they have to make a contested catch, they're better than when you tell them to run a 6-yard dig and get your hands up and catch it and then make a move. You know what I mean? Like he needs that competition. He needs that extra line of focus, whatever it is, that allows him to go grab that football. If it's gift wrapped and handed to him, he might not be as laser focused. I don't know. We've seen it before, super gifted guys like that. So
the Jazz Reynolds, as it's known about in Norman.
That's a good one. I hadn't thought about that. Jazz Reynolds.
He almost seemed Jazz Reynolds. It was like one-handed catches, no problem. When you got the second hand in there, that it like screwed up his rhythm.
Can't say that about every receiver.
No.
My old receivers coach, his favorite thing was 2 hands, Hoover, 2 hands.
But we know Hoove has a flair for the spectacular. So the one-handed grabs, plucking it out. Odell Beckham was just watching Hoove's high school film.
Well, coming off the Tulsa game, I think it's fair to say I was more of a Steve Largent type route runner.
Yeah.
Than I was a downfield threat, right? Coaches love my route running. Put it that way. Hey, we're going to get into the defense, the Oklahoma defense against the Cincinnati offense here in a few minutes when we get back from this little timeout. Don't go anywhere. It's all coming up next on the AllSooners Podcast. And we're back. If you're on Twitter, you can give us a follow at all_Sooners. You can find me at Johnny Hoover, John E. Hoover. Ryan is over at _Ryan Chapman. And don't forget Ross at Ross Lovelace. Randall is at Randall Sweet 5. And Tim is at Tim Willert 2. We got all those dudes at practice, at games, contributing, writing, shooting videos, editing, doing all that stuff for you, where you can find their work and our work at allsooners.com. We are a Fan Nation affiliate, part of the Sports Illustrated Network. So remember, AllSooners is all free. We do have premium signups, but you don't have to sign up. You don't have to pay anything. You don't have to submit an email or a password or a credit card to read everything you want at AllSooners. It is free. You love that, don't you? Okay, Ryan, let's talk Oklahoma's defense against the Cincinnati offense this week. I asked a question of Brent Venables yesterday. How gratifying is it? And I asked Dylan Gabriel this question as well from an offensive standpoint, but for Brent Venables, it was from a defensive standpoint. How gratifying is it to go into the offseason and say to your team, this is the area we need to work on? Third down defense stinks. We have to get better. We have to be better on third downs. 3 games into the season, guess is it number 1 in the country in third down defense conversion?
Yeah. Right up there. It's Brent.
They're one of the top. They're one of the top for sure. So, Brent Venables said it's what was the word he used? Now I can't remember. Assuring.
Yeah, it's gratifying has been a theme, as well as reassuring to everything that they're doing.
Yeah, so that's something that Oklahoma's defense has been just spectacular at, is third down conversions, third down, getting off the field. I don't know, Ryan, what's been better? Tackling has certainly been better, but you could take it way beyond that. They're better in coverage. They're better pressuring. They're better all over the field. Yeah,
there's a big clump up at the top, as you'd expect with just 3 games played, but Oklahoma's tied for 21st or 21st all alone, allowing 30.4%. Utah's number 2 at 20%. Then Michigan State is number 1. I think that will drop there for Sparty based off of everything that's happening. But Oklahoma's right there in the mix in the top 20, 21. And John, is it too much of a cop-out to just say they know what they're doing? Like, I know that they've said that before, but year 2 in the defense, you don't see guys confused. You don't see, like, they're able to read and react on third downs now, as opposed to having to think, okay, what am I supposed to do on this call? What are we doing here? David Agwebe, are you in the right spot? Deshaun White, are you in the right spot? It's the defensive line in front. Like, that's the thought process that Danny Stutzman's having to go through last year. Now he's just like, okay, I can focus on trying to diagnose what I'm seeing in front of me from the offense and making plays. And the same group of guys are not playing every single third down because they have bodies they can roll through. So I think that is also a bit of why the tackling has improved, is that you don't have guys having to chase down for 4 quarters. We've seen the secondary little snake bit with some minor injuries, but it's made them make a bunch of changes all the way through. And when we start to talk about corralling Cincinnati's run game, Deshaun McCullough's played a quarter of football. He hasn't even been a factor so far. Brent Venables confirmed Monday night he's back. He's going to be in this contest. But it's been whether Harrington at Cheetah, Peyton Bowen at Cheetah, Kip Lewis. They've been able to move some guys around and still have those results. And I think that's a testament to, again, just knowing what you're doing, comfortability, and then the depth that they've built. They've talked about it all summer. Every coach feels like they've built competitive depth in the summer usually, and in the fall. You're seeing it through 3 games at Oklahoma, though, and I think it's helping in the crucial moments.
Yeah, so just to clarify for you guys, I screwed up. My question was to Brent Venables about the offense, not about the defense. The offense does rank number 1 in the nation. Number 1 in the nation in third down conversion, 67.6%. The defense, as Ryan said, ranks 21st in the nation at 30%. The reason I get those confused is because OU was terrible at both last year. Terrible at both offensive third down conversions and defensive third down conversions. And they both coaches, when we went into the offseason, when we went into spring football, when we went into August training camp, Ted Roof and Jeff Levy both said, we need to get better at third down conversions. We need to get better at third down conversions. So, yeah, that's why I'm getting my wires crossed, because it's easy to sit there and say they were terrible at this last year and now they're really good. Okay, slow down, tap the brakes. We've said this 100 times in the preseason and in the offseason. This schedule that Oklahoma is playing this year is Charmin soft, very soft, painfully soft. Like, not going to help you soft when you get into Big 12 play, not going to help you when you face Texas. So not going to help you when you get into championship November. Part of that is what we're seeing right now. A soft schedule, bad teams, number 1 in the country, right? If they can continue this and they don't have to be number 1. We've said that a million times. If you can play solid defense and score some points, you're going to be a competitive team. Oklahoma's had trouble playing solid defense and scoring a lot of points at the same time. If this team can do that, then this number 1 ranking might carry over. It might actually mean something over the course of the season.
Yeah, and offensively too, they've been I think they've probably been in more third and longs than they would have liked 2 through 3 games. That's got to get corrected, and I think that starts with either Jeff Levy just saying our identity this year is throwing the football, so let Dylan Gabriel take the skies on first and second down. It doesn't have to be big shots down the field, like just get 7 yards on first down, then you can play with it. But yeah, defensively, they've also done a really good job of corralling teams on first down. And so I think that's helped them out a lot. Something that we've kind of written about, and you wrote about the defensive line. It's Isaiah Coe had some great quotes on the defensive line up at AllSooners.com. But something I've been asking about a bit this week is it really feels like, for me, I don't know if this pass rush is going to ever get labeled as overwhelming at any point this season. But because they have 3 platoons of guys where there's not really a huge talent drop-off against tired and bad Big 12 offensive lines, which they're going to play a ton of this year, I really think in the fourth quarter, Oklahoma might be able to flip that trend of not being able to close last year, because this year it feels like whether it's the interior or the guys on the edge, the Sooners have enough bodies that they can simply wear teams down, and then suddenly in the fourth quarter, you have a fresh PJ out of Warray rushing the passer. What? Come again? There might be one team in the conference that can block him, and that's Texas, athletically. Everyone else is going to have to do it off scheme. And he's your fourth quarter option so far. Like, no thank you. If I'm a left tackle that's gassed and suddenly you have Predator lining up across me, that's not great. Not great, Bob. So it's one of those things where, yeah, we talked about it. If the schedule ends up being as bad as we thought it was in the preseason, and I've seen nothing through Big 12 play that I don't think there's many good teams in this conference at all. I don't even know if Oklahoma's a great team. This could be a 10-win team with no real wins over good teams. But you know what? You know what great teams do, John? They embarrass awful football teams.
Yeah.
Oklahoma's played two awful football teams, and they've embarrassed two of them, 2 out of 2.
Not sure even Texas is great this year because we'll look at Alabama all of a sudden, right? Wait a minute. Texas beat Alabama. Yeah, but what's Alabama now? I'm just saying. That kind of ticked me off a little bit when Texas played Alabama, and you start to see and identify who's who and what's what. And then the following week, you're like, really? Wyoming? Really? South Alabama or South Florida?
And also really South Alabama. Not for Texas and South Florida, but
by proxy. To say South Alabama by proxy. What a whooping that was. What an embarrassment. To your point, Ryan, OU is number 1 in the nation in third down conversion percentage on offense. Number 2 in the nation in team passing efficiency. So good on Dylan Gabriel. Number 3 in scoring offense. Number 7 in passing offense. Number 8 in total offense. Number 5 in scoring defense. Number 4 in turnover margin. You see, you got all these top 5s and top 10s. Number 5 in the nation in first downs. So that's great. That's definite progress that Oklahoma is showing. The players are playing better. I think they have better players this year than they had last year. The culture is changing. But let's not try to hide the fact that this is one of the easiest schedules in all of major college football. You talk about the Power 5 level for sure. They're doing it. They're doing what you said. You've got a bad team in front of you, go whip their ass. And they're doing it. That's all you can ask of them. Isaiah Coe and Savion Byrd didn't make this schedule, right? They're just going out there and playing the dudes that are in front of them, and they're doing a great job of doing it. So,
and frankly, jokes they didn't make this schedule because the Georgia game was taken off of it too. It's like he has no say in the conference play, and the non-con it was supposed to be Georgia. You
remember my lead on the SMU game.
Thank God they were busy.
Georgia was busy. Not bad at all that Georgia was tied up for this one. Yeah, if that game had stayed in place, you got the 2-time defending national champs coming to Norman, Oklahoma in week 2. I think it might have looked a little different, Ryan.
Just a tad.
Yeah. That would have been fun, though. What a great cover. What a great game to cover that would have been. Gosh, dang it.
Oh, well, we got a couple of those next year. I'm already on
like three, I know, right? Yeah. It's going to be awesome. A couple of red flags, Ryan. We've talked about the running game ad nauseum. Let's move on. Red zone defense, OU is tied for 109th, and let's call it what it is. Penalties per game, Oklahoma is tied for 100th in the nation. Penalty yards per game, 114th. How much of a concern is that for you moving forward into Big 12 play when you've played three rum drums?
Yeah, let's start with the red zone defense. I think that matters of what your barometer was coming into the year. Because if you're expecting Oklahoma to be like a top 30 defense, then yes, all the red flags. But we've said this a ton. If Oklahoma jumps 60 spots in total defense, they will be the number 62 total defense in the country. Like, that's where this unit was coming from. And while total defense, the percentage is figured just by did you get stops, Oklahoma has gotten a couple of field goal stops in the red zone, which doesn't really show up in that total defense or the red zone defense percentage. And that was not the case last year. Last year, every time a team got to the red zone, they were scoring a touchdown. So I do think that is some improvement, but they've got a long way to go to be an elite unit, and I just don't think they're going to get that this year. Flip over to the penalties. That is something like last year, Oklahoma finished middle of the road in penalties, but it felt like every single flag came at the absolute most backbreaking critical time for Oklahoma. I think early on against Arkansas State, most of those penalties were like a team that was coming out of camp wanting to be super aggressive. And then from there, it feels like you've had a couple of face mask stuff like that. If they can fix that during the year, then I think all the penalties they have are fixable penalties. It's not like guys just getting roasted off the line of scrimmage and they're having to hold. It's just, why did you hold here? It was unnecessary. But we didn't really see that improve last year. So that's something to monitor. I'm not as worried about the penalties right now, but I do have an eye on it if it doesn't dip down as play goes on. The red zone defense, I think the first building block is you go from giving up touchdowns to giving up field goals, and then you force stops altogether in the red zone.
Okay, you want to go over the Cincinnati offense briefly. I mentioned it yesterday on the Brent Venables press conference wrap, and that is Emory Jones is their quarterback. Emory Jones is a familiar name from Oklahoma's recent past. In 2020, he played in the Cotton Bowl against the Sooners. He was the backup to Kyle Trask. After Trask threw all those early interceptions, Emory Jones came in and kind of stabilized things a little bit. Ended up leading the team in rushing that day, scored a touchdown and had 60 yards on the ground, also threw for like 86 yards, and then transferred again. Now he's at Cincinnati of all places, and he's going to face the Sooners one more time. Ryan, he's a handful. Athletically speaking, this guy's hard to corral.
Yeah, and he's the second leading rusher right now in a rushing attack that's been really explosive. Him and Corey Kiner, the running back out of the backfield, as well as Ryan Montgomery, that they're kind of change of pace back, their number 2 guy. They form a really, really potent rushing attack. I think the book on Emory Jones has always been, if you can keep him in the pocket, that the accuracy just isn't there at the elite level, and that's what you want to see. And if you go back and you look in that overtime, that crucial play where Emory threw a terrible pick, he could have walked in for a touchdown if he had the awareness to exit the pocket, flush out to the right, and he probably just might have had to stiff arm a guy across the goal line, but he would have had it there. So Oklahoma, but to get to that point, they have to stop the run. If Oklahoma doesn't stop the run, if they can't contain Kiner, then Emory Jones is going to have everything at his disposal, get that thing going. If not, if Oklahoma can bottle that up, get them into 3rd and long, then I think as long as they're disciplined in the pass rush lanes, they can keep him in the pocket and really get to work from there, because he will throw it to the other team. It's kind of why he was benched at Arizona State last year. And so that's a big if, though, because remember, we got through the non-conference slate last year, and Adrian Martinez, who similarly coming into that game, Adrian Martinez is not a good quarterback. I stand by Adrian Martinez is not a good quarterback, and he made Oklahoma's defense look silly because they couldn't tackle him, and they let him stand in there with plenty of time to deliver strikes to the tight ends over the middle. So I think that this is a big moment where they can show growth, because I would have classified Jones and Martinez similarly as like, yeah, they're really athletic and that's their danger. I am not scared of either of those guys, and Martinez shredded Oklahoma, and I think he showed the rest of the year that until he got hurt, he ain't that guy, dude.
Yeah, that's a great comparison, that Adrian Martinez came in and had literally the best game of his 5-year career, and he had it against Oklahoma in Norman. So that was a red flag for this Brent Venables defense last year. If they can show against this guy that they've kind of fixed some of those issues, those rush lane issues, those taking on outside blockers, kick out blocks, for instance, with your inside shoulder instead of your outside, getting tied up and having a guy slip right past you without even offering any resistance. That happened about 4 times last year with Adrian Martinez in his backfield. I don't know too much about Kiner, 6 yards a carry, but that tells you that he's doing something right. They've played a pretty easy schedule as well, Cincinnati has, but I say that, and they're 2-1, so a little bit of a shocker. Pittsburgh was a game on their schedule, Ryan, where it looked like, okay, Cincinnati-Pittsburgh, that's going to be a showdown, throwdown. Pittsburgh obviously is not that team either. West Virginia kind of cleaned their clocks last week as well. So what do we know about any of these teams, Ryan, except Miami, Ohio's obviously all that, maybe.
Parody. Welcome to the portal era. Well, also, I think you're seeing – I'll be interested to kind of go through the rest of the year. I think you might see college football come back down to, yes, there is parity because of the portal, but some of these schools that popped up, not having a billion COVID seniors, I think you're going to see kind of a return to the order of like, is there more parity than the early 2000s? Yes. But at the end of the day, the more talented teams are the more talented teams. And we don't have seventh year guys on the rosters to outfox some of these true freshmen and true sophomores that are more talented. That's where I think you're going to see that level out a little bit. And Cincinnati, really, like coming into the year, John, we didn't know how to handicap this game because Cincinnati's a whole new roster, basically. And I think that this being game 4, I still don't have a great handle on what the Bearcats are, other than looking at and saying they've run the ball really well, and I know that defensive line is good.
Xavier Henderson is your ace wide receiver. He's your WR1 there for the Bearcats. He's a guy that's he's got twice as many catches as the next guy, so he's definitely your wideout one. And by the way, how cool is this? He spells his name with both an X and a Z. X Xavier Henderson. So that's cool. He's got points on my list already.
Yeah, I think this will be the first real test for Oklahoma secondary as far as I like Preston Stone. I like Jordan Hudson. I was kind of underwhelmed with the rest of the SMU offensive operation. Like we said earlier, we'll learn a lot more this week as they play TCU, and we're trying to get our hands around what anyone is. They've at least got some bigger bodies to deal with. I think Satterfield, I know Satterfield's a good offensive coach. Offense hasn't really blown me away through the passing game. We'll see. We'll see what that looks like. But one thing to monitor, if Justin Harrington's not going to be a go, Peyton Bowen playing Cheetah, sounds like Reggie Pearson, he was labeled as hopeful for Brent Venables in the press conference on Tuesday. What does that mean? Deshaun McCullough was hopeful to play last week. He did not. So I don't know if that means he'll play or not. If Oklahoma is down some bodies on the back end, that might be – Ginger Williams has had what's, to my eyes, not reporting, my eyes look like a couple of stingers the last 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. If Oklahoma's down to Kenai Walker and Key Lawrence and Robert Spears Jennings and they're not full strength, not able to rotate as much, as the secondary going to wear it down throughout I just think something to monitor.
That's what I wanted to finish with, Ryan, was injuries. Some bad news for Jaden Rowe this week. Dislocated kneecap. He's out for the season. He's going to get surgery on Tuesday. That's confirmed. And then Brent Venables said, Brent went down the long list of injuries, Ryan. Said he's hopeful on most of them. But Phil Picciotti, for instance, freshman linebacker who really hasn't, played. I don't know if he's gotten snaps. I don't think he's gotten snaps yet. I think he was on target to redshirt anyway. But you hate to hear that for a kid coming in from, New Jersey via IMG in Florida. He's away from home. Probably not going to be a big issue, but now all of a sudden you're not even practicing because of an injury. That's tough for a young man to kind of compartmentalize that and push through. And, now you're all by yourself in your rehab lane, right? And you're doing your own thing and you're not getting that constant feedback or that constant support or interaction. It's a tough thing for a young man, for a young player for sure. But both those guys are going to have season-ending surgery, Venables said. And then there's some other guys that he's hopeful about this week.
Yeah, I believe the list was Savion Byrd, Reggie Pearson, R. Mason Thomas, Deshaun McCullough. Feel like there was another in there. We've done this a couple of times, but those are the guys that are hopeful. And then Justin Harrington, I'm not expecting to see Justin Harrington anytime soon. When you go out to practice, you still see it's a massive, full leg wrap on his left leg. It was a massive brace. He traveled to Tulsa as moral support, but Brent Venables said that, paraphrase, and they're exploring some different options for Harrington. Didn't sound like he's slated to return anytime soon.
When you start talking about a senior and you're exploring options, you start talking about, how convinced are you that you want to try and play in the NFL, right? If you don't want to do that, or if you think you got no shot, or if you think this knee injury has wrecked that, then you might consider playing, rehabbing what you can and trying to play some more this year, later in the season. Some other options are, getting the surgery and getting it done now and getting ready for the NFL draft. Because I think Justin's a guy that you put him in the right system, you put him in with the right coaches. I think he's a guy that can impact the NFL draft, can impact an NFL team. He's a very gifted guy, and he's a very driven guy, and he's a very positive, relentlessly positive guy. I think that's going to carry him a long way in life. So whether it's in football or coaching or somewhere else,
in the kitchen with his
that's
food
right.
empire.
That's right. Yeah, he could be. Who knows where it's going to take him, but hopefully he gets back, because everything that he's been through. He's a junior college guy that when he got here, his knee was already wrecked, and he didn't even know it. So they had to have surgery. Under Grinch, he didn't like what was going on there, so he enters the transfer portal. Venables comes in, he returns and says, "Coach, can I please come back?" "Okay, but you got to do X, Y, Z, and ABC every day." "Okay, no problem." He tells Brent Venables every day, "Hey, Coach, thanks for bringing me back. Thanks for having me back. Thanks for the opportunity." He's somebody that just carries himself with a great amount of gratitude and thankfulness everywhere he goes. And you just freaking hate to see somebody like that who finally has a starting position, finally has a direction in college football, and what happens to him? Second game he gets hurt, and it's like, gosh dang it.
Yeah, and he doesn't have enough tape to get drafted. I just don't think he has enough tape at all. So
he'd have to be a combine guy,
plus the
out there.
Medical file plus no tape. You're immediately to undrafted free agent. So don't know if the hardship waiver is an option, but it just doesn't feel like Justin Harrington will be a factor this year at this point.
Yeah, hopefully he can get back on the field at some point, whether that's this year or in the future. He might need a couple of years to rehab that thing and get himself right. It's happened before. It could happen again. He could be one of those dudes that kind of comes out of nowhere and has a nice little NFL career. I think he's athletic enough and smart enough football-wise to be able to do that. Anything else we're missing, Ryan, about this game or the TU performance or what's coming down the pike?
No, I just think it's I know the Miami of Ohio loss took some shine off it, but Eddie and I were talking this morning and totally agree with Eddie. It's a huge game to show. If you want to really prove things are different this year, it didn't start with game 1, game 2, or game 3. I know things got tight in the fourth quarter against SMU, and Oklahoma responded with scoring 14 straight and a dominant defensive performance after giving up the touchdown. But you want to prove things are different, you go handle a Cincinnati team you're better than on the road. Go do it. Let's see it.
Yeah, this team's still got some things to prove, and we'll say it again. The schedule makes you have to prove it every week, and not in a tough way like you got to roll up your sleeves. It's okay, you haven't beaten anybody. It's a totally different vibe, because usually the schedule is good enough that it proves who you are. This schedule hasn't done that yet for Oklahoma. I think there's some progress. I think there's a lot of heading in the right direction. There's a lot of what used to be red flags that are now green flags, but there's still a long way to go. 9 games, like Brent Venables says all the time, nobody around here is beating their chest. So he's probably emphasizing that again this week. Cool story, by the way, at AllSooners.com on Drake Stoops. I caught Bob talking yesterday about he got a question from Teddy Lehman on his radio show about going back to Ohio. You're going to have a bunch of family there, and Bob's like, "Yeah, man, I got more than 40 tickets." So and he said that most of the family that's up there in Ohio has not seen Drake play, and Drake said, "Yeah, most of those guys have not seen me play." So I'm real excited about it. So how cool would that be? Drake Stoops goes out there and puts on a show and scores a couple of touchdowns or something for all the family in the stands at Nippert Stadium. 40 tickets, that's a lot.
Big contingent, but I think Bob's got the resources to wrangle it.
Probably so. Good stuff, Ryan. Thanks for jumping on, man.
Absolutely. We'll see ya.
Coming up next on the show, Randall Sweet's going to jump in. He's going to talk OU recruiting. That's all next on the AllSooners Podcast. Okay, final segment of the AllSooners Podcast. Remember, guys, if you like the podcast, go ahead and like it. Drop us a nice rating. 5-star ratings are what we really appreciate. So give us a rating on your podcast platform of choice. You can also like us and share us on social media. I can't express to you how helpful that is when someone else, other than the AllSooners family, shares us on social media and says, listen to this guy's podcast. They do a great job, whatever comment you like. If you hate us, go ahead and tell us that you hate us, but share us on social media. Get the word out there that there's another good OU podcast, and we'll appreciate it very much. And, of course, if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Leave us a comment there. We might reply. Occasionally, sometimes. All right, segment 3, and we have brought in Randall Sweet to help us dive into the world of recruiting. But first, I want to get Randall's thoughts on where the Sooners are right now. They're number 16 in the polls. They're 3-0 on the season. They've beaten 3, as we said in the first 2 segments, 3 bad teams. Not really 100% sure how good this Oklahoma team is yet, but Randall, they're going on the road to open Big 12 conference play, a new Big 12 opponent in Cincinnati. Let's get the elephant in the room out of the way, and that is your first big road trip covering college football. You're going to the Queen City, one of America's finest old cities. It's a fantastic place. I've been there several times. You've never been there. Tell me about how excited you are to get on a plane and get off somewhere else in greater Midwest America.
I'm really excited. I mean, of all the places for my first, true road trip to be, Cincinnati, like you mentioned, is a great destination. I mean, there's a lot of random towns in college football. Not that those towns aren't great, but Cincinnati, I think, is a great place to go for my first time, and I'm excited to try the food there. I mean, I know you've talked about a few restaurants that you, Ryan, and I are definitely going to be visiting. So I'm excited to see what that's all about. Spaghetti and chili, I hear, is a combination there. So intrigued.
Yeah, but it's not real chili.
Oh, okay.
It's Cincinnati chili.
I'm still interested.
Oh, listen, it's fantastic. I hear people saying they're not going to do chili and they hate chili and this chili on spaghetti and there's no what's with the cheddar cheese and blah blah. You've got to reset the way you think about chili when you go to Cincinnati. The chili you're going to get in Cincinnati is not Deep South Texas 5-star chili, 4-alarm fire chili. It's not any of that. It's not even close to that. It's a little more soupy.
Okay.
And it's got some cinnamon. The image that comes to mind when I think of Skyline chili, I don't know why, but the word brown comes to mind. Okay, so it's a tomato-based chili. It's tasty. It tastes different. It doesn't taste like regular chili, man. So go in there with an open mind.
Yeah.
And that's the main thing is if you like New York pizza, don't go to Chicago and say, I want New York pizza. Go to Chicago and have Chicago pizza, right? So that's what this is. Don't go in there and say, this is not real chili. It's Cincinnati chili. Just embrace it. Lean into it and enjoy it. I think you're going to dig it.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm excited to try it. I feel like I have a pretty open mind when it comes to food, so I'm very, very excited.
There you go. All right, and I'm going to take you to. I was looking at this Italian place. I'm not going to tell y'all what it is until I get back, because I don't want to have to wait 2 hours for a table once I tell y'all my recommendation. But it is amazing. It goes back to the early turn of the previous century, the 1900s. Trying to think. Oh, Marilyn Monroe has eaten there. Frank Sinatra has eaten there. Gangsters used to eat there. So. Man, I'm getting excited just thinking about this Italian place. Anyway, here we go. Recruiting. It is 12:30-ish on Wednesday, and in about 6 hours from this moment, Danny Okoye, Tulsa, Noah, defensive end, edge rusher, 4-star, state best player in the state. 6 hours from now, he's going to announce his school. He's going to make his decision. He's going to commit. We on the AllSooners Podcast are like many others. We think it's going to be Oklahoma. We're not predicting it. I guess we could predict it. I predict it'll be Oklahoma. We're not reporting it. We're not sitting here saying he's definitely coming to Oklahoma. That's not what we're doing. We're predicting that's what he's going to do. I'll be there in Bixby tonight because it's right down the road from my house. And we'll have a video up. We'll have an interview with Danny. We'll have a story ready to go. But what do you think? We can't dive into it too much because if he does a little switch about and picks a different school, then we're standing here talking about Danny Okoye going to Oklahoma when 6 hours later he's changed his mind or something. What do you think? What do you think's going to happen, Randall?
Well, I agree with you, and I think that I would predict that it's Oklahoma, but again, not reporting. I'm not sitting here saying that I know or I absolutely think that's what's going to happen. I think that that's the most likely situation right now. if there were a challenger out of his top three schools, I think the biggest one would be Texas. I mean, given where they are in the rankings right now, obviously what they've done this season, um, you know that could be huge on swaying a high school kid. But I think that given the relationship that OU has built with him, and continue to develop with him even into the regular season, even into OU's regular season, I think that OU is definitely going to. I think that OU is most likely going to be the choice tonight, and I think that he's going to be a huge addition if he does pick OU. I think he would be a huge addition to a defensive line group that already has David Stone, that already has Nigel Smith, a few other really talented recruits. I mean, with if you look at Smith, Okoye, and Stone, that's three top 100 defensive linemen, all in the same class. Now, I know the OU fans might be upset that they didn't get Dominic McKinley, or if they don't end up, if Williams and Nwaneri doesn't end up committing to Oklahoma, obviously he's committed to Missouri now. If that stands pat, then I think that getting three top 100 defensive linemen, regardless of not having those two in the class, is still a huge win, and something that we probably wouldn't have seen from an OU recruiting class a few years ago. So heading into the SEC, you need guys like that. You need those big athletic defensive linemen.
Yeah, and I think getting three of those top 100 would be a phenomenal get for an Oklahoma defense that has ranked consistently in the 80s and 90s and 100s and 120s in total defense, NCAA total defense in the last decade or so, decade and a half even now. So yeah, that would be huge for Brent Venables' second full recruiting class. Last year's class ranked, I think, top 4 in the country. This one's trending toward, if they're able to pick up a couple more guys, trending toward that top 5, top 10 for sure. I think they're number 9 right now or something like that, depending on who you follow. That's within the 2024 class, and that's defensive line. Again, we'll be there in Bixby at Danny Okoye's commitment. So if you're listening to this before 6:30, check out AllSooners.com for the latest coverage there. Offensive line is somewhere, Randall, that Oklahoma has tried to increase or improve its standing in terms of just landing 4 stars and 5 stars, but it's been tough. Bill Bedenbaugh has found himself developing a lot of low 4 stars, high 3-star type guys over the years. But this recruiting cycle, 2024, could change some of that a little bit. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that right now there's 3 offensive linemen that OU's really in play for. One who has a commitment date set, and that's Daniel Akinkunmi from the NFL Academy in London. He's set to commit on October 12th, which is the week of after OU Texas. OU has a bye that week. And I think that right now it seems really positive for him I think OU fans should feel really positive about where he sits with OU. I think that, when he came on his official visit against Arkansas State, obviously OU put their best foot forward that weekend. I mean, he was there with a bunch of other recruits, but they still made him feel like a priority. He posted repeatedly throughout his trip. It seemed like he had a really good time from reading the social media posts. Right. And obviously when you go watch the team that you're there to see win 73-0, it's going to, leave a bit of an impact on you. I think that was the first college football game he's been to in America. I know for sure it's the first Oklahoma game he's been to. And so the atmosphere there, I'm sure, had a big impact on him. And it seems like after that, we've seen the flurry of predictions come in, predicting him to commit to OU. I think that that's the most likely scenario right now. Which would be a great get for Bill Bedenbaugh. I think Akinkunmi is a 3-star, but I think a lot of that might have to do with just the competition he plays and it being really hard to see the film and really get access to watching his games.
Yeah.
Obviously you can watch his huddle, but that's highlights. That's going to be the best,
right.
And so it's hard to really evaluate off of that, especially when you don't really know the level of competition he's playing. It just creates a lot of obstacles, and it could. That could be a reason why maybe he's underrated. But he's got a pretty good offer list. I know Clemson's on there, a few other really good programs. So getting him would be a huge get for Bill Bedenbaugh and OU. I think he's the most likely offensive linemen that they added, the 2024 class. Obviously, they're still in the mix for Grant Bricks and for Eddie Pierre-Louis. But right now, Pierre-Louis seems like he really likes UCF. And being from Orlando, it might be hard to pull him away from
Mhm.
UCF. Obviously, OU's still in the fight, and they'll have a shot to play UCF, which maybe that gives them an upper hand. But again, I think that right now OU's second place in that race. And Grant Bricks, it's really hard to tell. It seems like at one point maybe OU was in the lead, but now it seems like they're really in a fight with multiple other schools: Nebraska, Kansas State. Just some programs in that area where he's from. And those teams, the Kansas States, stuff like that. They've produced offensive linemen, so it's not like OU's recruiting against a bunch of nobodies in that race either. So they're going to have to do their work if they do want to end up with Grant Bricks. But I still think that they're in a solid position coming down the stretch to do that. I don't think that anything's been decided yet, but I think they definitely have a puncher's chance in that one.
The tricks with Bricks, see what I did there, is he's the way I understand it. I've never met him. I don't know him, but he's a Great Plains kind of guy. You know what I mean? Culturally, family wise, historically, he loves being from that area. He's very prideful about where he's from. And when you talk about Nebraska and you talk about Kansas State, you're talking about a couple of programs in the agricultural belt, so to speak. He's from where? Iowa, right? So he is from Iowa, right?
Yes, but he's from right on the border of Nebraska and Iowa.
Yeah,
So
yeah, right across from Omaha. So,
right.
yeah, so that's something I've always felt like that was a little bit of a tough pull for Oklahoma, just because it's further away from home,
Right.
but it's also further away from the lifestyle that he's kind of grown up in. And sometimes guys want to get out of that lifestyle, and sometimes guys are like, no, that's who I am. I need that around me. So we'll see.
I think that one thing that you mentioned that's key is being close to home. I think again, from like you said, from what I understand, I think that is a big factor in his recruitment. I think he wants to be close to home, and not that Oklahoma is across the country, but Nebraska, Kansas State, it's a lot closer than Norman.
Let's see. Has there been an example lately of an athlete from that area who came to Oklahoma and wanted to get back to? Yeah, maybe some softball player. I can't quite remember.
Oh yeah, I heard she was pretty good.
I heard she was pretty good. Hopefully, we get to see her next spring pitching against the Sooners. That would be fun to see Jordy Ball pitching against Oklahoma. Okay, although I don't know how much fun that would be for Patty Gasso. We'll see. Anyway, back to football. What do we know about Terry Bussey and his number one athlete, ATH, number one athlete in the country, arguably, has been strongly considering Oklahoma, but it doesn't look like that's trending that way anymore.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, number one athlete in the country. I mean, this guy is extremely versatile from quarterback, receiver. I mean, I think last year he led his team in passing, rushing, and receiving yards, which is insane. Timpson High School in Texas right now, they're ranked, I think, the number one 2A team in the state of Texas. So, again, great player. And like you mentioned, OU's been in the mix, but it doesn't seem like they'll be the end result. But they continue to, throughout his recruitment, even when it didn't seem like they were the lead candidate, they continue to stick around. He's been to Norman for a game day this season. I can't remember if it was SMU or Arkansas State, but I'm pretty sure he was here for one of those two. He was in Norman over the summer. So this is a guy who's said that he enjoys Norman. He likes the atmosphere and things like that. I think that it's going to be hard to wrestle a guy from Timpson, East Texas, away from Texas A&M and UT. Those really seem like the leaders right there right now. And I don't know how many people listening to this know Texas geography, but East Texas, Timpson is a lot closer to College Station A&M than Norman. So again, maybe being close to home is a factor. We know A&M has a deep NIL bag. They recruit really well every year, so that's going to be a hard team to pull him away from. But I mean, if they can do that, then it would be really intriguing because he's probably a receiver in college. And we know that this 2024 OU receiver class is already really, really deep. So that would be remarkable if they were able to land a commitment from him. But right now it seems like Texas and Texas A&M are kind of battling it out. For the
Yeah.
spot.
It sounds like Emmett Jones has kind of moved on from that particular recruitment as well. So he's got some dudes. Emmett Jones has got some dudes lined up. Someone else who's got some dudes is Jeff Lebby. He's got a 23 quarterback who's tearing it up right now at OU. He's got two 24 quarterbacks, so he's having to figure that out as the season goes on. He's got a 25 quarterback committed in Kevin Sperry, who is 4-0 as the starting quarterback at Carl Albert, and he's got a 26 quarterback committed, kind of, Randall, almost.
Well, they made an offer to their
Yeah, not committed. I meant offered. I apologize. My mouth gets in front of my brain sometimes.
They made an offer to their first quarterback in the 2026 cycle, which is a big deal. The quarterback position is not one where we usually see a laundry list of offers like at other positions.
Yep.
Usually coordinators and coaches identify their guys really early in the process, and they offer those guys. And at the quarterback position, only one guy can play unless you're Oklahoma State. Then so so most of the time you're only recruiting one guy out of each class. You're not offering as many. So to be the first quarterback to get an offer is a big deal. That means that they've identified you early as a guy that they really, really like. But Legend Bay,
having said all that,
Legend Bay, the quarterback that Jeff Lebby and OU offered in the 2026 class, looks like maybe he's going to play receiver to running back in college. He's 5'10", 175 pounds right now as a sophomore in high school. Could grow, again, only a sophomore in high school, but 5'10" right now. Versatile athlete. I mean, the moves that he can pull off as a ball carrier, spin moves, cuts, are really, really remarkable for a quarterback. I mean, it looks like if you go watch our man Parker Thune's video on Twitter, he spun out of a tackle in the backfield, and you'd think it was Lamar Jackson. It's really impressive. Again, I'm not saying he is Lamar Jackson, but that spin move specifically looked like a play Lamar Jackson would make. Anyway, the thing that leads me to believe that maybe he's not going to play quarterback at OU is that in the picture he posted when he got offered, it was with Emmett Jones, not Jeff Lebby. Obviously, Emmett Jones is the receivers coach, and that may just be coincidence because that's who was available to take the photo, or that's who his primary recruiter is. But I do think it's telling that Emmett Jones is kind of doing a lot of the legwork on that recruitment rather than Jeff Lebby. I think that if it was a quarterback, then maybe it would be Jeff Lebby kind of taking the lead on that. And so I think that that's a pretty solid indicator that maybe Legend Bay is going to, at least in OU's mind, be a receiver, running back, something like that at the next level. But again, time will tell. Still got a few years in high school. And again, this is a guy who's going to rack up a lot of offers. So OU's got to put in a lot of work to even land a commitment from Bay. But explosive athlete at a Mesquite Horn High School in Texas. Obviously, you identified him early. They're interested. He's been to Norman this season also. So there's obviously some mutual interest there.
Yeah, my apologies to the viewer for misspeaking. When I say commitment, I meant offer. So, whoops, didn't. At least I didn't say signed. I say that from time to time as well. Oh, they signed a guy. No, they got a commitment from a guy, dummy. But the dude's name is Legend. Let's see if it's always fun to write about people like General Booty and Legend Bay. What if I had a quarterback named Legend Booty?
Combining a few of the potential roster.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Okay, so that's kind of wrapping up. Where OU stands recruiting wise. Again, we'll just preview real quick. Danny Okoye, number one player in the state of Oklahoma, is making his call tonight, and he's going to play in the SEC next year.
Mm-hmm.
He just doesn't know if it's going to be at Tennessee, at Texas, or at Oklahoma. Those are his top three, so that could be. I'm looking for. Has he said a couple times fitting to shock y'all or getting ready to shock y'all or something like that? Could be surprising. So we'll see. I'm not ruling anybody out, but I'm really not ruling Tennessee out.
Yeah. We know that the NIL bag at Tennessee runs pretty deep as well. This is a team that was really solid last year. Solid SEC team, again, with a deep NIL bag. It's a team you can never rule out in recruiting.
Yeah. All right, Randall, let's get your thoughts on Sooners at number 16 in the polls, 3-0 on the season, playing an easy schedule, kicking everybody's butt. Covered 3 times. Good teams win, great teams cover. So they're a great team right now. What are your thoughts on how Oklahoma has started this thing?
I think that, like you acknowledged, the 3 teams they've played have not been what they will play. Obviously, this year in the Big 12, or obviously next year in the SEC when the schedule gets much tougher. But you can only play who's on your schedule, and so far they've taken care of business every time. SMU, I know Ryan mentioned in our post-game podcast, it was a little hinky, but they, like you said, they covered, they got the job done. Their defense looked really solid in that game, even when they made a few mistakes on defense throughout the season. They've turned around, they've recovered really well, and I think that regardless of who the competition is, it has to be acknowledged that they've looked 2 out of the 3 weeks they've looked really, really good, and I think that 16 right now is appropriate because I think, as you would say, Brent Venables isn't beating his chest. They haven't beaten anyone that is up to the standard that OU is, or at least that OU wants to be. And so I think that before we can justify them raising much higher in the polls, we would need to see them take on some of that conference competition and kind of handle business as they should against a team like Cincinnati that lost to Miami of Ohio last week, or against a team like Iowa State that's missing obviously a lot of what we thought they would have coming into the year, lost to Ohio last week. Those are 2 teams that OU should be able to handle, even if Cincinnati is on the road. And if they can go in, they can handle 2 conference opponents. Then heading into Texas, I think that OU fans should feel excited about a big matchup between 2 teams that'll really, I think it'll really be a good indicator of where they both sit right now in the college football landscape.
Yeah, I agree. Good stuff. One thing that I was going through the stats earlier, and one thing that I didn't mention is that Oklahoma ranks number 1 in the country, number 1 in scoring margin. So I told you guys after the Tulsa game, OU's got to lead the nation in scoring margin right now, 66-17 and 73-0. What that tells you is they're getting their job done.
Right.
They're not having the little snafus and the little foibles that were holding them back last year. Good teams, bad teams, doesn't matter. You play against yourself, and if you play to a level, you play to a standard, and you're able to execute 66 points on the scoreboard or 73 points on the scoreboard, or you're able to average just, what is they averaging, something like 34, 10 points a game right now, something like that. So they're averaging on defense. So they are just crushing people's souls. They're ripping their souls out right now, and that's something that you want if you're going to be a championship contending team. So they've made those strides. Now, as the schedule gets better, as the opposition gets a little bigger and faster and stronger and more intense, more better, whether it's better coached or more intentionally schooled or whatever you want to say it, it is incumbent on Oklahoma to continue that upward trend. They don't have to continue to beat people 66-17, but they do have to continue to execute in the red zone, execute on third down, knock field goals through when the time comes. Don't miss tackles, don't miss blocks, don't miss assignments, don't miss calls from the sidelines. That's the part that's gotten cleaned up to me, Randall.
Yeah, I agree with you. And hey, if they do start beating everyone 66-17, then I think that's a pretty good indicator of where they're at. But in all reality, I agree with you. And I think that, like you said, they don't need to go in and necessarily blow the doors, every week off every team for us to know that this team has improved. But they do need to, like you said, show that in the details they've improved there, not missing tackles, like you said, not missing blocks, just the little things. And I think that so far, at least, like you said, they've done that. If they continue to do that against Cincinnati, against Iowa State, and especially against Texas, then I think that then we'll know that a lot of those issues have been fixed for real.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll know more on Saturday night, that's for sure, Saturday afternoon.
Absolutely.
Good stuff, Randall. Thanks, man. We'll see you in the Queen City.
Yeah, I'm excited. See you there, John.
All right. Hey, thank you guys for listening. We'll be back next week on the AllSooners Podcast after the game in the press box, unless they kick us out. That is certified fresh post-game podcast. And then, of course, next Wednesday we'll be back You can catch all of our podcasts on Apple, Google, Spotify, Podbean, iHeart, or wherever you listen to your podcasts if you have an Amazon-enabled device. Just say, Alexa, please play that AllSooners podcast. It's also on our website, allsooners.com. Just click on the player and listen on your phone, your tablet, or your computer. And, of course, our shows are all posted on my YouTube channel, John Hoover Media. For Ryan Chapman, for Randall Sweet, I'm John Hoover. See you guys.